Hello, everyone. It is me, Danielle J. Mitchell, your up-and-coming queen of real estate, and I'm here for another episode of Tuesday Tip at 2. Well, hey, everybody. It's me, Danielle J. Mitchell, queen of real estate, social media extraordinaire, and I'm back for today's and this week's Tuesday Tip at 2. In case you didn't hear, let me let you know what's going on in the Gordon Ramsay streets in regards to real estate and squatting. Well, if you hadn't heard, the streets are talking in regards to Chef Gordon Ramsay's London pub being hit by squatters. Isn't that insane? Okay. The food, TV, entertainment, and restaurateur mogul is struggling with something that many of landlords across America, and especially here in PA, which I service, are going through. Somebody squatting on his property. It is trending news. If you have not known anything about this story, the Cliff Notes version is these people decided to take up residence at his pub while he was in negotiations and temporarily shut down the pub to negotiate some lease terms. And these people in there living, not only living, but also giving food out to people. Now, I don't know if they're trying to be Robin Hood or what, but this is absolutely bananas. Of course, I wanted to keep you informed about squatting as it pertains to where I serve locally, which is PA, specifically Philadelphia, Montgomery County, Delaware County, Chester County, all of the surrounding suburbs of Philadelphia. And if you're interested, you need to go to book.djmrealty.co. Again, book.djmrealty.co.com, and I can get you started with buying, selling, or investing. Just go to the website to sign up today. Hey, subscribers, you know what you need to do. If you haven't subscribed, click the notifications button. Now, of course, after hearing this story about Gordon Ramsay, I was like, I have to talk about this because this is not the first of me hearing this. I'm around investors all the time. I'm in a lot of investment groups, and I work with investors as well. So I hear a lot about squatters. There is a press release that had came out just recently, about a few days ago, in regards to what specifically Pennsylvania is going to attempt to do in helping people with this squatter issue. So let's talk about squatters rights, all these different things that's going on with it. I want to keep you informed. All right, let's get into first. What is a squatter? Let's talk about the definition of a squatter. A squatter is a person who unlawfully occupies an uninhabited building or unused land. That's the technical definition of a squatter. And so many times the thing about squatters and the definition of that, especially across this country, and specifically in PA, is that it's not what you think it is. A lot of the people that you think are inhabiting properties, such as tenants. A tenant is a person, of course, who has a lease with you, paying rent, and oftentimes people will call someone who was formerly a tenant and who is not paying rent anymore, they will call them a squatter, or a person staying past their lease and not paying and all those different things. They will call them a squatter. But technically, that is not who they are. Okay. So again, going back to definition, a tenant is somebody who is in a lease, right? Whether they pay rent or not, they are legally bound to a lease, okay? If a person is renting a property and has established a landlord-tenant relationship with the owner, they are not considered a squatter. Tenants have a legal rental agreement and pay rent to legally occupy the property, even if there is no formal lease agreement. So even if there is no formal lease agreement, their possession of the property is with the owner's permission because they're paying to live there. Now you have trespassers, right? Which is very common anywhere, but especially in Philadelphia. A trespasser is someone who is occupying a property without the owner's consent. But unlike squatters, trespassers do not have any intent to take ownership or claim or legal rights to the property. Their unauthorized stay is temporary, so it does not qualify for adverse possession, which is something we're going to talk about. All right. Now, another definition we need to know about is holdover tenants. Okay. Sometimes tenants will continue living in a property after their lease or rental agreement is up or expires. These holdover tenants are not considered squatters since they had lawful possession originally as tenants. The unauthorized holdover is after the rental period has expired or ends, and they are not necessarily trying to stay there to use the squatter's rights, which we're going to talk about in a second, but they are simply staying there past times. Sometimes they may or may not pay rent, but you will go through the proper legal eviction processes through that's associated with your municipality. So whether that's Philly, whether that's outside of Philly, based on your county, your township, all that other stuff. So you go through that legal process of evicting them. Now, let's talk about what a squatter is. A squatter in Pennsylvania is a person that occupies the property, either abandoned or unoccupied. If the property has an owner who lives there or rents it out, then this does not qualify. So it has to be a property that is abandoned or unoccupied. Okay. Another definition or another thing that qualifies as a squatter is take possession without legal right or permission for the property owner. There can be no rental agreement or contract giving the person permission to be on the property. And to be a squatter, they must have intent and interest to take ownership of the property through adverse possession. Simply trespassing on the property does not qualify as someone being a squatter, okay? They must occupy the land with the goal of gaining legal ownership after 21 years. 21 years. So, let's talk about squatters' rights, known as adverse. It allows a person to gain ownership of a property that they do not have title to by occupying it continuously for a set period of time. And in Pennsylvania, that set period of time where they could legally own the property is 21 years of continuous occupation of that abandoned or unoccupied property. In addition to 21 years of open, obvious, exclusive possession, the squatter must pay any of the property taxes or make improvements to the property during that time. If they met all the requirements, the squatter can file a quiet title lawsuit after 21 years to legally claim adverse possession and become the new owner. Okay. Now, PA. We have some of the strongest squatters' rights laws in the country. The continuous possession time period is among the shortest at just 21 years, and some states require 30 or 40 years of occupation before adverse possession claims will be recognized. Okay. Coincidentally enough, there was a statement released from the Senate in Harrisburg stating that they want to crack down on a lot of what's going on in PA, because one of the pitfalls is that it's not very specific. A lot of these squatter laws and, holdover tenants and whatever you want to call them, because I think we use it, especially in PA, especially in Philadelphia, we use these things interchangeably. You have a tenant who's a holdover tenant now. They don't want to leave. They're not paying rent. And so we often call them squatters. And there's really no protection for landowners. And yes, we're going to talk about in a little bit how you can evict people, but that process is so laborious and it takes some time to get through it, okay? Because files and courts are backed up continually, especially in Philadelphia. So the process, by the time you have to pay all the money you're also losing out on money, it gets to be a lot. So PA Senate is proposing to do some things differently, get some specifics in there to protect people from squatters, from tenants in general who are just refusing to vacate properties, and it's really causing landlords to suffer. So let's move on to how you can remove squatters. How can you remove squatters? That's okay. So first you have to serve notice to have them vacate, and typically you have to give them a 10-day notice. Make sure that you identify the location of the property and provide a specific date by which they must vacate. Send the notice by registered mail and post a copy on the property. So you have to serve notice for them to vacate. You have to file an eviction, of course, right after they refuse to vacate. And then, of course, you have to get a court order to have them remove, file a lawsuit, go through that whole process. And depending, again, on the county, it can take some time. So how can you prevent squatters from being in your property? I don't know how much you can prevent it, but hopefully here are some safeguards that can help. You need to inspect your property. So if you have a property that nobody's there, is vacant, whether it's land or just abandonment property in general, you want to inspect it, see what's going on. I recently visited a property with my investor clients, and that property was boarded up. The the windows were boarded up, the doors. They had kind of makeshift things so that people can, come up and gain access to the property from the basement door. They had the 2x4s that were covering the door. I mean, they had it fully secure. That owner stated, hey, previously we had a few times where a person just wanted to break in and to stay there, and they completely fortified the property so that people couldn't at least easily gain access to it, if not at all. Okay, so you want to make sure that that property is absolutely secure. Of course, maintaining the property, again, making sure that around it is decent, is clean, it's okay. Making sure it's not just coming down structurally and stuff like that, because the other part is that your particular municipality might deem it as being a structural hazard and all that stuff, and so you don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure that you're at least maintaining that particular property. Other thing you want to do, install a security system. Now, of course, sometimes some people say it doesn't help at all because people come in, still stuff still happens. But at the very least, you capturing it on camera and things of that nature. And you want to make sure that you keep good records of your property's information and what's going on with the property. If something does happen, you definitely want to make sure you call it into the police and don't just kind of leave it out there lingering. So making sure that you're maintaining it, that you have documents on your property that's all up to date, is crucial. Now, let's talk about specifically how to remove a squatter from your home if you are in the Philadelphia area. So, of course, to remove a squatter from your home, you have to still follow the PA rules in regards to Pennsylvania Landlord and Tenants Act. But you definitely want to get a hearing with the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. Okay. A landlord will present the necessary information at the hearing to a judge. And if the judge rules in favor of the landlord, the judge may levy a fine and impose a 90-day jail sentence to that particular tenant. Or holdover tenant. However, the fine and jail sentence often does not directly result in the squatter leaving the landlord's property. So following the judge fine and possible jail sentence, the next step requires the landlord to deliver several documents to the squatter. Okay. The first step is to serve the squatter with an eviction notice. A sheriff or police officer must deliver the notice and give the squatter 10 days to vacate the property. Again, there goes that 10-day thing. After the 10 days have passed, the squatter and the squatter has not left, you can file an eviction lawsuit. They will hear the lawsuit in front of a judge, and the judge will decide if the squatter must go. If the squatter is a former tenant of less than 1 year, a landlord can serve a 15-day notice to leave. However, if the squatter is a tenant for more than a year, the notice increases to 30 days. Additionally, if the landlord can demonstrate the squatter is engaging in illegal activity, the notice is reduced to 10 days. Okay. If the judge rules in your favor, they will issue a writ of possession. The writ allows for the sheriff to remove the squatter from your property by force if necessary. A right of possession, is a writ or right? WRIT. Writ or right of possession is the final step in the eviction process and the last resort. The intervention of a sheriff can turn violent and potentially damage the landlord's property. Okay. Unfortunately, even if they expedite this entire process, it can take several months to complete, as stated before. It is also expensive, giving the time the landlord must spend in court before a judge. The process of removing a squatter from your property can be long and complicated. So having an experienced squatter's attorney or squatter's rights attorney on your side is essential to protect your interests and to help you navigate the legal landscape. The terrible part about all of this is that in the interim, you're losing money. Your expenses are just being sucked dry, essentially, right? So not only can you pay for the mortgage that's on your particular property, but you're also dishing out a slew of extra expenses, whether you're paying for an attorney or just filing on your own and by yourself. And it just becomes very expensive and time consuming. And oftentimes it can result in landlords, going into foreclosure and potentially losing their property. So you want to make sure. So it's really tough right now. So at this particular time, it's just really tough if you're facing this kind of situation in PA and in Philadelphia, because it gets to be a lot. Now, one thing I know that a lot of owners will try and do is do what they call cash for keys. So rather than racking up all the expenses of that time and doing all of these things will afford you, they will rather take that money and potentially give it to the person who is in the property. Now, of course, that can still be risky, because just because you give them the money doesn't necessarily mean that they have left, will leave, or anything like that. So it's definitely a process in how you give the cash. Don't just give it, right? But make sure, hey, I'm there when you're moving out. I'm looking at the property to make sure, you're out of there. I'm immediately changing the locks as soon as I see that you're out of there. Yes, now I'm gonna give you the cash for keys, right? So that's another tactic that many landlords use, because they would rather just give it to the tenant to get out of there, because it cuts the time short, rather than have to wait for that whole long process and wind up, bleeding more in expenses. I hope that's helpful to you. I did something a little bit different today for our Tuesday tip and two. It's still revolving real estate, but you landlords, you investors, I hope that helps you. All right. Listen, if you're interested in buying, selling, or investing, even though this is not the fun side of investing, either way, if you're interested, you know what you need to do. Go to book.djmrealtyco.com. Again, book.djmrealtyco.com. Remember, there's no place at home, no place at home buy. And I'll see you next time for all this.